Hi everyone, my name is Julio Del Rio, and it's finally time for Application Module 1. My last name, obviously, Del Rio, so I've been assigned Module 3, and I will be discussing how attitudes are learned from your surroundings as well as from your upbringing, rather than them being embedded in you since birth. I will be applying the information provided from the textbook to my own life and provide an example from my own experiences in how my attitude regarding skin color has changed since moving from Puerto Rico, and try to explain how this little bit of culture shock has made me more aware of color as a whole. Attitudes are learned through the environment that we're brought up in. They are something that is taught or learned through the behavior that you see that gives you the impression that that is how things should be. When I lived in Puerto Rico, it was very unusual for there to be any sort of racial prejudice whatsoever, or even mention of another person's skin color, regardless of any situation. It's almost as if, like my dad says, even to this day, we were colorblind and didn't even really notice that people were of a different color than ourselves. I actually remember that being one of the more noticeable changes when we moved. All of a sudden, the color of somebody's skin was incredibly important, and it was weird. It was a weird change from the colorblind world that I'd been living in when I was younger. This change has affected me in all aspects of my life, really, both professional and personal. I never really noticed a person's skin color before, personally, probably because of the lack of anyone using an individual's color to identify them or themselves until I got here. That said, because of the surroundings that I moved to, that changed, and because of the surroundings that I moved to, that changed. And even in elementary school, my friends would immediately just start calling each other like, "Oh yeah, he's the black one," or "the white one," stuff like that. And it was a really big shock for me. Because in Puerto Rico, we never really looked at someone's colors. We looked at the person themselves or the achievements that they had under their belt, We identified through that rather than their color. Obviously, that attitude has nothing to do with genetics, but entirely to do with what I was taught and what was going on around me. As I've been in the U.S. for most of my life, though, I have honestly started to see people in color now, which, I mean, it can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on if you identify with your racial stance or whatever it is. But I never do it in a negative way. I just want to make sure that I get that across. But it's just really, really different from Puerto Rico, where that was just never a comment that was ever made. I think that it has turned out this way in the U.S. because of its history. Color has always been of huge importance to the nation, and it's always been something that separates the individuals that live here. Like I said earlier, it was something that was incredibly unusual for me and most people around me in Puerto Rico to even mention someone's skin color. Another reason this could be happening is that individuals in the U.S. simply use color to identify as part of their respective communities, which is a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't really matter. But in Puerto Rico, it was mostly, probably because it's so small, we all identified as Puerto Rican rather than of a certain color or anything other than that. In conclusion, I believe that attitude is something that is learned through your surroundings as well as your upbringing, as well as, yes, the way you're raised. I had a pretty weird culture shock situation when my family moved from Puerto Rico, because of the fact that color suddenly became so important to notice and to be aware of. Plus, one day, I suddenly was dubbed the White Islander, which simply just inflamed the confusion that I was already in. But yeah, that's it.